Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, there is relief in Uganda as the notorious warlord and LRA chief Dominic Ongwen is found guilty of 61 out of 70 charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court. He is the first LRA commander to be convicted by the Hague Court. Also, as Ethiopia focuses on ongoing conflict in the Tigray region, ethnic crises elsewhere deepen. The Benishangul-Gumuz region has been the scene of repeated massacres over the past few months. And there's a tense wait for the team behind Nigerian film Milkmaid as it makes it onto the Oscars shortlist for next week. It's a nominee for Best International Film at this year's Academy Awards. But first, there was relief in the Ugandan village of Ludoki as, in The Hague, the International Criminal Court found Dominic Ongwen guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The former Lord's Resistance Army commander oversaw a reign of terror by a group that killed more than 100,000 people from Uganda, Sudan, DR Congo, and Central African Republic. In 2004, 65 people were massacred in Ludoki.
We have followed this case right from its inception until today when they found Dominic guilty of the crimes he committed in Lukodi and other places. The community of Lukodi is grateful to the court for siding with the people.
Initially, I was worried that Lukodi would not be considered in court, but I am so happy that at least Ongwen will be held accountable for the things he did here.
Let me say, on my own behalf, I'm really happy. I'm really happy. I could say God loved me. Having survived that day, and after 15 years, many of my colleagues who survived, but they were unable to listen to this information today.
Well, Ongwen's the first LRA commander convicted by the ICC. He's also the first judge to be both victim and perpetrator. He was one of 60,000 children abducted by the LRA. Following the verdict, our Grania Harrington spoke to Victor Oden, who's been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work rehabilitating child soldiers and LRA victims.
To me, this is a milestone that we're happy to say that today we have seen the fruit of the journey that we have been in for over the last 15 years coming into a success today. To a bigger picture, it's a very strong deterrent. It doesn't matter whether you are abducted as a child and conscripted to become a killer. There's a moment in life that you know what is right. So you cannot hide behind the command chain. It comes to the command responsibilities. And this goes not only to Ongwen, but those in command platforms, whether it be in government or in any opposition, know that it comes to individual responsibilities. You cannot hide behind the structure. If it's justice, it will come to you.
So a lot was made of this question of the criminal responsibility of Dominic Ongwen. So the defense said that because he was both a victim and a perpetrator, because he was abducted as a child and essentially grew up in this terrible rebel movement, that he wasn't responsible for the crimes that he committed even as an adult. What's your take on that?
Yes, he was abducted, but he reached a point when he had reached a command responsibility. He knew what was right and what was wrong. Ongwen had power to walk away from the battlefield if he wanted to. But he took pleasure in causing all the pain, burning the camp, setting the whole communities ablaze. My own brother was abducted in an attack that was commanded by Ongwen. And up to now, he has not come back. So what we say as victims, as survivors, as people who directly lost, is different from what academicians, politicians, and intellectuals of this world are talking about. There's a big difference between politicians, intellectuals, lawyers, all those technical accolades they're carrying is not the same feeling of what we have on the ground.
There's been a lot of debate about whether the ICC is the right forum for these kind of crimes, about whether an international court that is so remote from Uganda can deliver the kind of justice that's really meaningful to the people of northern Uganda. and that can contribute to reconciliation. What do you think about that?
The traditional justice mechanism is an opportunity to resettle, heal, resettle, and allow reintegration in the community, but it's not a substitute for justice. What Ongwen went through, going through international criminal trial, is the right thing.
Courtney Harrington there speaking to Victor Ochen after the ICC found Dominic Ongwen, the former LRA commander, guilty of war crimes. In other news, the US Secretary of State has expressed Washington's grave concerns about fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The conflict began in November when federal troops confronted fighters of the TPLF leaders of the northern region. Thousands have been killed, and there are warnings of a deepening humanitarian crisis and rights abuses. With Addis Ababa's focus on the north, crises elsewhere in the country have deepened. The Benishangul-Gumuz region has seen repeated massacres over the last few months as inter-ethnic tensions there surge. Our correspondent tells us more.
Mubarak is 7 years old. About 3 weeks ago, his parents were murdered during a massacre in Benishangul-Gumuz. While he was running away, he was shot. His aunt took him to a hospital in Chagni in the neighboring region.
His mother tried to gather up her children and the family, and they rushed to the forest, but they were caught there and massacred. He cries and has nightmares. What he has seen is burned into his memory.
Recently, there's been a surge in ethnically targeted massacres in western Ethiopia. The Amhara are a minority in Benishangul-Gumuz. Tens of thousands have been displaced and have found refuge in Chagni. Senede managed to escape with 2 of her children.
After we cleared out the field and the harvest had started, they came to the village and stopped us from harvesting. I had been staying at home with the baby and couldn't farm or help with the work, but my sisters and brothers are dead.
Most of the displaced say armed members of the Gumuz ethnic group were behind the bloodshed. Here, communities are constitutionally deemed to be either native to the region or outsiders with unequal territorial rights. Recently, competition for land and rising Amhara nationalism have reignited tensions. Along this road, villages stand empty. Access to Benishangul-Gumuz has become difficult because of the insecurity. The native Shinashas are one of several ethnic groups that have been attacked. Gumuz communities have also been targeted.
Many Gumuz are also victims. In the Wambera district, many of my relatives have been killed. We can't say that everyone in the Gumuz community is a criminal. This is a very big mistake.
Because of resulting stigmatization, Gumuz and other locals are scared to leave the region. Many hide in the forests instead. Some crossed over to Sudan. The government has declared a regional state of emergency and mediation has begun, but most displaced people say they're too scared to ever come back home.
That report by our Maria Gerth Nicolescu. In Central African Republic, rebels continue to try to throttle the capital of Bangui. 1,500 trucks are still stuck at the western border with Cameroon as the army continues to try and get traffic flowing again. The main road through has been blocked by militia since mid-December, and prices continue to rise in Bangui as supplies there run low. Clément de Roma has more.
Hundreds of trucks have been stranded at the Central African border since rebels first launched attacks in mid-December. A dozen of trucks full of humanitarian supplies finally managed to make it into the country on February 3rd. But the corridor remains unpredictable and difficult to secure. That's had an effect on crucial supply routes in central Bangui. Food is scarce. Many Central Africans try to stock up by shopping in the PK5 district, but scarcity has meant prices just keep increasing.
Merci à Dieu, les gens passent un peu de l'autre côté du Congo. Et ça vient un peu, mais le grand route d'ici là, c'est bloqué complètement. Il n'y a rien qui vient.
On a peur. Si les prix augmentent encore beaucoup plus, là, on ne va pas s'en sortir et les activités seront bloquées.
Last month, the government announced the reopening of the main road that leads from Cameroon to the Central African capital. But that clearly didn't go as planned. A commercial convoy was attacked only a few days later. It is difficult to know how long stocks in the capital and in the regions will be able to continue supplying the markets. Some humanitarian organizations are already talking about the risk of famine and malnutrition in the region. Nearly 2 million people were already food insecure before the start of the fighting at the end of last year. The ongoing clashes have forced more than 240,000 people from their homes.
Clément Di Rome there. Now, there is a tense wait as the team behind Nigerian film Milkmaid waits to see if it makes it onto the Oscars shortlist next week. It's a nominee for Best International Film at this year's Academy Awards. It tells the story of two Nigerian sisters whose village is attacked by Islamist militants, and it's already won 5 Africa Movie Academy Awards, including Best Film. Julia has more.
It's the story of two Fulani milkmaids, Aisha and Zainab, whose lives are disrupted by the Islamist sect Boko Haram. The film is about the profound transformation of northeastern Nigeria by the armed group in the last decade, from the point of view of these two women.
As a Nigerian, I felt it was important that, we put some backstories and some personalities behind all these casualty statistics, which were feeding on a daily basis, unfortunately, in the country. And I felt that the victims of insurgency were not getting the attention that, I felt they truly deserved.
Aisha is determined to save her younger sister and brave enough to stand up to the militants. But along the way, she realizes that it may never be possible to go back to the way things were. An epic and original screenplay, which the team hope the selection committee will appreciate.
I believe what the Oscars are looking forward to, or what they're looking for, is a story that is beautiful and also particularly well told when it comes to all of the technical elements that come together to tell the story. We've told a story, which is a Nigerian story, which is our story, from a very beautiful perspective.
The film is in Hausa for full day in Arabic, possibly to avoid the setbacks of last year's Nigerian submission, which was disqualified because of its English dialogues. Either way, the director says having made it this far is an encouragement to tell stories he describes as not necessarily of the commercial type.
And finally, several South African celebrities have been nominated at this year's Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. Amongst them are Miss Universe, Zozibini Tunzi, actress Tuzo Mbildu, and Springbok rugby captain Siya Kolisi, who are all up for the Favourite African Star category. DJ Master K, meanwhile, the producer behind the international hit Jerusalema, is up for the Most Favourite Global Star prize. They'll all have to wait until March 13th to find out who wins, but in the meantime, we'll leave you with what's probably a pretty familiar tune. Join us again if you can. Jerusalema,
If you want to really understand what's going on in the world, you need to follow the money.
In People and Profit, we tackle the biggest stories in the global economy and break down why they matter to you.
From mega mergers to market crashes and those new business ideas that just could change the world.
In this economy, it's the show you can't afford to miss.
Join us every week for your essential business briefing.
People and Profit on France 24 and France24.com.